Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarian.
Oh yes, I am Andreas, and this is MK UltraDuck.
I'm on
Michael, do you have a more Dutch way of saying Michael?
No, that's exactly how you would pronounce it over here.
All right, thank you. Well, then I guess we'll look at your bike for a second. Do you want to put on your screen share?
Yeah, let me open up my. I don't have a camera. I'm sorry, guys.
It's cool. I'll use this great picture of a duck that I've got.
Okay, how do I screen share this thing if I have two screens? How do I do this? Screen share. That ought to be it.
Let me close this guy down. So the Discord's been going fantastically well, and one of the greatest aspects of it is all of the people are coming out of the woodwork who know about this stuff from the places themselves, because a lot of the information has been looked at through our maps, and then we have people in those places say, yeah, actually I'm from there and I'm seeing it happen. And one of the guys who's been looking through this stuff with us, and he actually has found pretty much the world's star map archive. I would say, Michael, you're the foremost expert in star forts right now around the planet. I mean, it's no joke. You've done a really fantastic job indexing all of these things. So when did you first start getting interested? I mean, like, let's go back a few years and like, why don't you lead us up to how you got to like 8 weeks ago? How about that?
How do I get to 8? Oh, that's a story, man. I don't know. I started researching all kinds of stuff after I watched hours and hours and hours and hours of documentation, all that kind of stuff. And I got to the conclusion that no matter what viewpoint you take on that situation, it's wrong. It makes no sense. It's a complete cover-up story, and I pretty much went from that. Had some breaks every now and then, just not being too interested in the topic in general. And then, well, somewhere around Christmas, I ran into a video on YouTube by Colm Gibney, and he was showing all these forts. And I'm like, wait a minute, I lived right next to one of these things when I was a kid. That's cool. These things are all over the world. I think I got a new hobby. And well, that is pretty much what led to this stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And this is.
So where was the first star fort that you found?
Well, this one, because I live right next to it. I'm sharing it right now. How did I came about? Like I said, I lived in this house right here, across this huge naval fort, because it was used by the Navy in previous years. I'm not sure if they still use it, but they use it for shooting exercises. So every Wednesday we had firing exercises at aerial targets from the coast, and we had aeroplanes flying over, all that kind of stuff. And my grandfather used to work at the Navy as a munitions officer, told me all kinds of stories about how all these forts were interconnected in the past. There's tunnels going to all of them. One of them is completely demolished. That's this one. It had to go for the new harbor.
When did that happen?
Oh, I am not even sure on that. You know.
Any kind of guess, like within this century, you say, or?
Yeah, that definitely happened in this century, because my grandpa was part of building these locks as well.
Okay.
And these locks are actually what had to make the rest of the fort that was here go. They already built this road over it like a long time ago. I think that was somewhere the 50s. 1950s, that is, not 1850s. But yeah, that one had to go, so that's pretty much all flooded. There's no connection to these, but apparently these two are still connected. They're still looking.
Yeah,
at,
so Dirk Admiral and Star Fortress Air Prince, is that how you say that?
Yeah, Air Prince. That's correct.
And which direction is that facing that point, the downwards point there?
Yeah, say south.
Okay.
We zoom out, back in. Yes, it does. The point.
It's Dirk. So Dirk, what does Dirk mean?
Dirk is a name.
Does it come from anything like Kirk? I know he's like church.
Well, I think Derek in American is sort of a derivative of Dirk. Derek being more Eastern European, I think.
So it's interesting when you pull so close in, you can't see the Westover very closely at this point. But when you have them all close together, where you see all three of them, it becomes very clear that there were three forts that were around that triangle shape. You can see, I mean, that's a little harder, but when you pull out just a tad, you can see all three of them. Yeah, it's like there you can see how it's been dismantled, but it's still clearly another part of that structure. It makes me think that
I have my suspicions because this is the only one that is actually being hailed as a fort.
And what does that say? It says
Kijk down, which is look at the dune.
Huh.
And that's reimagined as a fish tank. There's a sea aquarium in this thing now.
Wow.
But this is a museum. But if you look at the outlines of the village of Huisduinen, which
Absolutely.
is house in the dunes, look at this point here, and we follow this line. There's a point here, goes back down.
It follows the same pattern.
It
So
follows the same pattern as all these forts, right?
And also the triangulations of land around the forts. The forts point towards the negative space. So if we could just understand a bit about, if we could project that same pattern from the Den Helder over the dunes, I bet you could see what it used to look like. And there's already kind of a pattern there.
Yeah, you can definitely see the things going here, and they all have slightly different shapes. Like apparently this is considered as the biggest fortress in the Netherlands. But then if you zoom out, you can actually pretty much deduce that this entire city was a fortress, right?
Right. It looks like all of the outer points are pointing towards a center point, which might have been that Dirk Admiral. Does that make sense? The Dirk Admiral would be the center of this thing, or does it have any distinguishing characteristics that make it?
I think the center was this. This is the old naval harbor.
Okay.
There's plenty of old maps that still show this as the readout. Well, you can see they completely demolished this one. Nothing left of it. This stuff is all new. This wasn't there on the old maps.
And you were saying your grandfather worked in the
Sadly departed. Many years ago.
I know that feeling. The greatest generation.
Oh yeah.
For a reason. Well, so was he part of the army, or was he part of a construction company, or how did that play out?
He was a munitions officer.
And so they didn't really explain much about it. They just said like it needed to be done for the environment or weather or something.
What, the destruction of these forts?
Yeah.
No, there's no real explanation for the disuse of them or anything. No. This was the army base.
Yeah, there's something interesting about that one. That's the one I find it looks like probably one of the more contemporarily used, and it's in a safer place from the water.
The funny thing, this one was used the longest.
Well, it seems like that's closest to something you could get to. Is that the harbor behind it, or what? That the ocean bay? Can you get how deep is that? Like their boats right there? Yeah, dark water. So
This is the wildest part of the North Sea.
yeah,
Mars Deep.
that makes the most sense to me. Why the star fort is angled? You know, if you've been looking at the star forts that are islands, particularly the Liberty Island with the Statue of Liberty, it's on top of a star fort, which is great for breaking the waves.
You want me to go there?
Sure. Or go anywhere you want. I mean, like that's a good one. Any star forts you're thinking of?
I'll take you to the Lake Liberty. That is New York, isn't it?
Plum Island, Staten Island.
There you go.
We just did it. Yeah, and you start seeing. I mean, obviously, it's been affected over the centuries, but it was the entire island was, you know, it's got the golden ratio around it, which is another interesting thing about these star forts is that they're not just the star; they're actually this like Orion belt constellation around it.
I'll give you a nice example of one of those. Colm Gibney, again, I want to give a lot of credit to this guy because he sent me his KMC file, which contained over 1,000 of these locations. So he done a lot of the work for me. There we go. Lost it. There you go. Denmark, Copenhagen.
Yeah, I've been to that one too, actually. That's funny. And that one's so weird, you know, because they've got all this park around it with these really beautiful statues of, I think they're copper statues even, but they're so green from the oxygenation. Very, very Tartarian looking statues, dare I say. Although, you know, realist, neoclassical, objectively.
If you look at this one, you can see this is what Colm describes as the hedgehog.
Mm-hmm.
This is the head, and this is the body, right?
And notice the compass underneath the Copenhagen. There's like this angled kind of compass in the streets, right there, down the circle. Yeah, see how it?
Yeah, nice little octagon.
That's pretty beautiful too. Oh, I love Copenhagen. Very nice place.
Right, if you look at this place, and then we take it back to the United States, going to Washington. There you go. A hedgehog. The head and the body. They just completely destroyed the body.
This is a thing a lot of people, by the way. There's a thing about the Leviathans in like the land designs. I don't know how far I go with it yet, but it's a thing I've heard.
Not too didn't go too deep into that theory yet.
I mean, I'm definitely, like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm one of the most pro Leviathan being Opis Thecanta, being a living mushroom-like thing that could be, like, the size of land masses or things like that. And I'm not, I mean, obviously, I believe in very large animals that existed even very recently. So, but the idea of them being that large or being, you know, whatever, I think if that were the case, then yeah, I mean, it's plausible. But then they would be more like giant mushroom creatures or something. I've just not quite gotten super deep into anything larger than, like, I've seen, you know, giant mushrooms that would have been the size of buildings, you know, in like Mexico and Argentina, and I've seen like fossilized mushrooms that are giant. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were life that were, it's plausible, you know. I mean, people say nothing's plausible, haven't thought about how it is plausible yet.
Everything is possible, man.
Yeah, not just possible, plausible. It's you could put it into a logic that could make sense, you know. But that's just the dangerous thing. I'm careful to do that because that might, you know, then you're easy to invest in it as well. But it could very well be.
You could go slightly crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, right?
Well, you become at least more asocial because you become slightly more of an outsider to a perspective. But then again, you start seeing like designs like where they've put like humans, they've put patterns in the Inca mountains, the Nazca trails and things. It's like, so it's not like there's not also representational art. That's not, I don't think anyone's questioning that there is representational art that's like visible from above. It's more about whether or not it's how coherent was a rock ever. And the answers are like there have been very coherent rocks, so it's plausible. It's just, it comes down to, do you think that's the cause of the deluge, right? Like a lot of it is, it's all hinting at this sort of connection of philosophy. Was there a giant flood, and did it kill these giant land masses which were alive? Let's look at any of these that are exciting you, like Mangalore or
You know what? They're all interesting because they all have their own funny little things going for them. They're all.
Give me an example. Pull up one that you've been thinking about, you've seen before, and you thought was really cool.
This one is pretty cool because it is another example of a small fort companioned by a large fort. And another good example of that you'll find in Vietnam, the ancient capital.
Is that what it's called? The ancient capital?
Yeah, the ancient capital of Wei, I think. You can definitely see.
Wow. And then it's all been populated. The walls have become like houses. Oh, that's incredible. Slow down on this one and just show some. Yeah.
The size of these things is just.
This one's really great. I mean, because from up here it looks like a grid. You get a little closer, you can see a chip, you see outlines, but you get a little closer, you're like, well, why did they look like that? And then you start to see it. You're like, okay, well, that's what's left.
Architecture in these is just stunning.
Such a symmetrical civilization.
Sorry?
Such a symmetrical civilization. It's not like
Absolutely.
We're looking at this like digital pixel cubes on top of what's left of these things that were, snowflakes civilization.
This is not necessarily a star fort in the purest of forms, but if you want to see something that ties in nicely to.
Yeah, vanished civilizations, artifacts in general are worth looking at.
Look at this symmetry. This is Angkor Wat.
So is that water?
Yeah, that's water.
Wow. So this is just a giant.
This is a lake, an artificial lake of a few kilometers.
But you can see, it almost looks like there's stuff underneath in the right there in the shallow end. Like you can kind of see.
Oh, look at this. Another lake, but this one drained.
Drained underneath. There's star forts.
Also that little temple in the center.
Wow. So we need to start looking at around man-made water sources and flooded plains and man-made lakes where they're hiding this stuff. Why don't you go look at Java around north of Australia and southeast? Yeah, all right, there you go.
I'm still working on. I found a bunch of forts, a list with hundreds of forts that the Dutch built on the Indonesian archipelago. But yeah, this is Java.
What was the name of that explorer again? The Dutch explorer?
Tasman?
Oh yeah, Tasman.
You remember? Wait, just a second ago. Now look at this.
Oh man.
This is Yogyakarta. If you follow these lines, you zoom in on the points, you can see that most of it.
Hold on then for like a few seconds. Yeah. And get the wide of this star again. Like, the one you had to Jakarta. Wow.
They even left a piece of the wall here. This is the entrance.
You want to go look at that volcano for a second? It's pretty nuts. Which volcano is that? Does it say?
Oh, I'd have to.
It's probably okay if you can't. Or
Could it be the Merapi?
pull out just a bit, yeah. Well, you get the idea that there's a lot of seismic activity or something to the effects causing shifts in the geography and architecture constantly in Indonesia and Java.
Oh yeah, this is I actually marked this one out. This is the location to the start of the year without summer.
Okay.
This is what remains of Krakatau.
Very strange that there's like sensor blocks over it.
I don't think it's necessarily sensor blocks because these are very high resolution pictures.
So it's just different times or something? They have like the different...
Yeah, it's probably requested by the Indonesian government or some other entity. I don't really know, but yeah, this is all higher resolution than the surrounding areas, and that's why it looks like it's
Let me see.
censored out, but it's actually high detail shots. So if you go into the trees, like you can see way much more of the foliage here than you can see here. So that's just high resolution shots. They want to see something here. I don't necessarily know what, but yeah, that's Krakatau year without summer.
And it's interesting how you can see it pushes the two places apart from each other in that zone. And then the water currents even are kind of affected by it. Yeah, let's figure out what are the close ones to Krakatau.
A fort close to Krakatau?
Well, let's start with that one really quickly while you're there. You're Ludwig. So where is this? This is pretty close actually though, right?
Surabaya.
Mm-hmm.
Surabaya city. That's Surabaya city is here. This general area.
And
But,
feel
yeah.
free also, like, anytime you're like thinking, like when you're like, and so I thought this, so I went looking for here. Like, go ahead and walk through your approach.
Sure. There you go. This one is closest to Krakatau.
That's pretty impressive. It's like, is it just in the fog, or I mean, because it's still like very clear.
I think it's in the fog. If you take this is something I usually use to check if something might be a fort. Right? You just go through the old images.
Oh, excellent.
Like so.
Wow, so that's basically the walls pretty much gone, and then you've just got like kind of the outline of the ground. I mean, I can't tell how high it is, but it's pretty much just the shape of it.
It doesn't really feature on the terrain either, so it's not really that high.
Do they tell you when these things they suggest that they were supposed to have been made, or who made them?
During the East India Trading Company time.
So they're all supposed to be like Spanish forts, basically.
Well, East India Trading Company was Dutch.
Oh, so they're post Habsburg only.
What was the East India Company? 1600s? These are the locations that make you go like, huh? I'm zooming in really quickly, but I'll show you where this leads when I zoom out. Like, Bastion Fort. That's a very nice list. There's a list of Star Forts wiki page, and that's a nice list just to start with, if you like this stuff. But it's far from complete. This is another one. It really doesn't show much on this picture. And in this picture, it's actually all clouded over.
So how about like explain your like opinions, like the Wikipedia page, like what's missing from it, you know, and like what are you seeing here that's extra?
What? Sorry. Again?
Like, what do you say? Like, you're seeing the Wikipedia page, you know, about bastion forts. Why is that not enough? And like, what is it missing? What else is there? Like, what are you seeing that, you know, needs to be expressed and explained?
Well, if you just head to the list of star forts on Wikipedia, I think the list ends at 200 forts, maybe.
Interesting. So it says that there's very few forts, but we're seeing, how many forts do you think you found?
I think I'm nearing 2,000.
Oh my gosh. And also spread out, like where are they supposed to be and how far from that have you found them?
Well, the main mention goes from there's forts in the United States, there's forts in Europe, there's a mention of forts in Norway, Scandinavia. But as you can see, while I do this, and my Google Earth freaks out on me.
Well, it's interesting because there's like the territories of the Dutch trading empire. I mean, like they were pretty vast and all, but they weren't in some of these places. That's kind of the thing. You can check the list. They weren't in certain parts of Russia.
I'm pretty sure the Dutch never went to Russia and built this stuff.
And parts of Peru, you know, maybe even like, but the depths of the Amazon, like that I've seen them. It's interesting because they're supposedly built in the fashion of them in the 19th century. But if you go to the Wikipedia page about these supposed bastion forts, it says very clearly that they went out of fashion in the 19th century because of their military obsolescence. So, I mean, clearly they were designed for other purposes than just for being bombarded with cannons. Not that that wasn't probably a nice thing for the walls, but, you
If
know.
you look at it from a purely, and this is purely given given history, they went out of fashion because people started flying. And the only thing a star fort can defend itself against, if you want to look at it as a fort, is an aeroplane, right? It's not very effective against bombs from the sky, but very effective against pretty much anything else. And that's purely looking from a historical perspective. But I'm pretty much undecided on their historical reason. It's all open to me. The reason I went into this stuff is because it's very tangible. You can look this up and see. And that is a fort here, an earthwork, and that earthwork is connected by all these lines, and these lines present themselves in a pulsing pattern. Right? You're with me here, you're following me, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I was just trying to see if we got Lean, but he's not going to come, I don't think, right this second, because it's probably late in China. We'll keep him for next time. We will set up, though, the next stage of this video, which will be the Formosa stuff. But we'll get there in a second.
That's definitely interesting. The whole Selandia thing is intriguing. Definitely.
So yeah, I don't want to jump ahead yet because I want you to get this part across. So this is Vodino, and this is in Russia, right? You said where in Russia?
I think we're near Kazakhstan.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all as you can see. I'm not going to go over 500 kilometers of fortified lines, but yeah, all these forts.
Each one of these points is a star fort you've found.
Yes. No, well, not just me.
But these are found star forts that are not on the normal maps usually.
There are locations for star forts, and some of them, like you see here, are almost invisible. But this, at a certain point, like you see these lines, at a certain point you can start deducing where these things are.
Right.
In this line, because they are all presented at fixed distances.
You gotta slow down. Now I see you're about as fast as me on this thing. I see what people mean when they say, we can't watch your stuff because it's so fast. Okay, so let's say 5 seconds on each reading of each word. So Chernovka is demolished, and let's go in there just real quickly for a second and just focus on that little area.
Do you see the outlines of the fort?
So I see the.
Like.
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, I see the points.
So sometimes it really takes sort of a throw your hat in the air and.
Yeah, it might be helpful. Can you pull up a picture of the bastion fort really quickly to show, or do you want me to try to do that? I'll show what a bastion fort is supposed to look like, I guess.
Oh, you mean a complete one that is in good condition?
Yeah.
This one looks fairly good.
Yeah, let me just get like a.
Or you want
a drawing of one is like, here's a great example. Is like a Fort Ricasoli, I think it's called. And okay,
it's Malta, right?
let me go to the screen for a second. And Fort Ricasoli. Okay, so you'd think that a Fort Ricasoli would look. I think when we think about Star Fort, it's hard to imagine that they actually look like more than just the star itself. Like the Pentagon is not the only part of Washington D.C. Like the thing about the fort is it has a strategic line of defense, but it also has several bastions, and it has a strategic line of charge as well. So it's actually kind of like a clockwork system designed to be attacked from one angle to another. So some of these star forts, like think about that when you see them, I guess. And I'm saying that to the audience, obviously.
Yeah. I figured as much.
Yeah, because like here you go, like right here, he's found a great example.
This is it. This is Ricasoli, the one you just showed.
Okay, yeah. And this is the model for like what you'll see a lot of these forts are designed on. They have a point. Can you go back to the center for a second? Look at that diamond point that it comes out at the top of it, and then you've got, a number of angles, but they all follow the same rules. That's a great one. St. Elmo.
That's right next door.
You know about St. Elmo's fire, eh?
We didn't start the fire.
Yeah, you do. Good answer. Well, there was like an actual like St. Elmo's fire, right?
Yeah. I'm aware of the St. Elmo's fire. I just referenced the song.
It's a weather phenomenon. It's like a thing that's like kind of Tartarian. It's funny, like a St. Elmo's fire is where like energy is like dispersed and thunderstorms cause. Okay, here's the wiki. St. Elmo's fire is a weather phenomenon in which luminous plasma is created by a coronal discharge from a sharp or pointed object. A strong electric field in the atmosphere, such as those generated by thunderstorms, or created by a volcanic eruption. I mean, like, what? I mean, it sounds basically like a completely insane, tall fisherman's tale. Like you'd see electricity shot out of the sky and it was like burning plasma.
Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening me.
Oh, Galileo. Hey, that's pretty fancy. So you've been putting red lines in these places, or what? How have you been doing that?
Yeah, that's just the line feature in Google Earth.
Weirdly useful. I mean, people can't see this stuff as easily without it, but it's right there. And it's funny because all this stuff, it's like quite intuitive that this would have existed in almost any city-state. Because you've got cathedrals, and then you've got trade, and you're going to want to have, not just like barriers from people, but even from weather. So there's a lot of practicality to this.
As you can see, all over the place. Anything you particularly want to see? Because I see these things on pretty much.
So yeah, all right. So the way I wanted to go about this presentation was I want to try, now that we've kind of visualized that there are star forts all over the world. I mean, geez, look at this map. You, as a Dutchman, have, kind of an understanding of Dutch history. And so from your understanding of how things went before, but also being skeptical, where does that leave you in your hypothesis of how, like looking at, this map, like the Dutch discovered, you think Tasmus discovered these things? So let's start maybe making a path of the, deluge to these star forts,
Right.
from the Dutch discovery of parts of Indonesia on to Taiwan or to Dutch Formosa.
Well, we'll have to go back into our wonderfully muddled history. Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the north. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the north. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the north. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the Phoenicia of the south. And Napoleon saw this as the This is again my city of birth. So he wanted to model it after Venice. And we kind of recently learned that Venice is tied into the Phoenicians. Now, if we go to Venice, sorry if this is all going really fast, but I know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, I'll just say like when you get to the spot, just hold on it for 5 seconds. But you know, that's the main thing.
That's Venice. Just one of the fortresses around Venice.
Wait, zoom in a little bit more. Let's hang out in Venice for a second. Okay.
Let's.
So you got a really interesting thing here, right? People like to go in boats all around Venice. And if you went just a bit out from here, did you see the snake just next to the star? See that snake?
Next to that little star right here, you mean?
Yeah. Wow. So that's pretty intense.
There's imagery like this in the bigger cities throughout the world. Another dead giveaway to the presence of, or former presence of, a star fort. But we saw that in the beginning of the video when I showed the hedgehogs, the one in the Ukraine, completely demolished, taken out of use. I mean, they don't even all look like stars anymore.
Okay, so this is a good example, or like the Venice one was a pretty good example of like, you know, the identical patterning in Holland. So you were saying that you got some, you're saying the king or the prince or whom was it that based it on Venice?
Napoleon.
Okay, yeah, Napoleon. So wait, Napoleon did this in Holland?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is again according to, I'm not necessarily buying whatever history is telling me, but I'm just going off the official narrative here.
Oh yeah.
And this one was supposed to be the Napoleon fort. Right, that small one reimagined as a fish tank we visited earlier. I'm not sure if this is all interesting, but yeah,
Okay.
if you see the gigantic forts that are right next to it, you can easily draw the comparison with me thinking that this whole village was a star fort as well.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty clear. It looks like it. I mean, it's got every facet of, you know, the other examples. So
Yeah.
how about also going towards let's look into Formosa for a second, because I want to get into the land of Zed, but I think before we do, I think we need a little explanation of this Dutch Formosa thing that no one seems to have heard of, but it's like probably the most interesting country I've you know, studied in a quick New York minute.
They even built one on Hawaii. Quick break.
Yeah, Kauai. Oh yeah, Kauai. Excuse me. One time I read Copernicus instead of Copernicus. Well, someone I know did, but I'll take credit for that mistake.
Okay, so Formosa.
So yeah, explain the history. Explain their story of Formosa.
I don't know a whole lot about the history of the Formosa, but what I read was a Dutch captain went to these islands.
What are they called?
These are Penghu Islands.
Okay, so the ones around.
They're
Those
next to
Taiwan to the west.
To the west of Taiwan, and he built a fort. I think it was this one.
And so they did this.
And anything like a star fort anymore because it was completely demolished.
Right, which is a thing they love to do.
Oh yeah, they sure do like demolishing their star forts.
So it looks like from like about 1624, Taiwan was under control of the Dutch as Formosa.
Yes. At least the south part of the country was under control, and that pretty much
And the Spanish had the north part of the country.
this little fort, Zealandia.
Zealandia. That's getting us into Zealandia.
That will get us nicely into the Zealandia stuff. Because we got a bunch of Zealandia forts for you guys.
I feel like Zealandia. I mean, it's kind of the thing that's like, it's like, are we ready to drop the bomb on you people? Did you know that it's actually bigger than Tartaria? Because everyone's having a hard time dealing with Tartaria. You're gonna have a harder time. There's more.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarian.